Courtland B. Lilley was a specialist, fourth class, United States Army at between December 1971 and December 1974.
Hello, I'm Joe Holloway, your host for Eastern Shore Veterans, Their Story, Their Honor. Our mission for this program is twofold. First, to honor our veterans for their service to our country, and second, to record a history for future generations, so we will remember the sacrifices they have made for our freedom. Today, my guest is Courtland Lilley. Courtland, how you doing?
Good, Joe. Thanks, and thanks for having me to be here.
Yeah. Courtland, you live in Parsonsburg, I understand now.
Yeah, right down from your store, by the way. Yeah. My brother bought when my brother moved back from Florida. He had bought a shop that he needed land for. So Woody Parker, a boyhood friend of his, had the old shop and the house, and he wouldn't separate them, so I got to be the caretaker.
All right, that's all right. So,
it's a great place to live.
Parsonsburg is a great place to live. So you grew up in Salisbury and
yes, sir.
Went to a local high school?
Yeah, I graduated from Wycomico High School way back in the day in 1971, and at the end of my senior year, that's kind of like the day I left home. I had a job working in Ocean City, so I came home, got my clothes. We had the apartment, a couple of friends of mine, one friend of mine from high school, and moved down to the beach and started working, delivering Budweiser beer for Tookie Dennis, and then worked nights at the 9th Street Arcade. And about midway through the summer, my mom called and said, I just got a call from the Marine Corps recruiter. You've been drafted. And I thought, the Marines don't draft people, Mom. Yeah. The Army does. Yeah. By the end of summer, I got my draft notice.
Well, was it a Marine Corps recruiter that called?
Yes.
So he knew about it.
Apparently so, and the odd thing about that was that, you know, once you get that draft notice and you have in your back of your mind, you know, Vietnam is still going on, and, you know, what should I do? And you think, I think the guys that decided, well, I'll go to Canada, had to be kind of a really brave move on their part. Although we looked down upon them as a society, I guess, for leaving and not wanting to serve their country. What they gave up is, you know, nobody's ever talked about it, I guess, to any great degree. So for whatever reason, I took the Marine Corps candidate test at Salisbury University during Earth Day. Inside this little room, and on the other side of it, there was this band that began to play just as I'm getting ready to sit down and take this test, hoping, you know, maybe I can stay out long enough that I'll end up going to Quantico, Virginia for lieutenant training. Well, somehow I managed to pass the test. And when I got the papers, I was reading through what I should bring for the summer, and on there it said lacquer thinner or brasso, because when they give you your brass that goes on your uniforms, they're already lacquer coated, and you had to scrub that off. And that was my decision right there. If they're already protected, why should I unprotect them? So I thought, no, don't want to do the Marine Corps. Thought about National Guard, and I thought, now what the heck, go for it. So December 17th, went to Baltimore and Fort Holabird. I don't even know if it's still open. And stood in line. I forget how many guys were in the line. Some of them were Marines, some of them had joined the Navy. Some of them, like me, were draftees. And so we raised our right hand, and it's always hilarious because you're nervous when you're standing there with your right hand up, and the sergeant standing in front of you, you know, says, raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, and then he says, say your name, and some of the guys will actually go, say my name. You know, so And once I got that done, and this is maybe a little bit more than you wanted to know, but it's kind of funny to me the way it turned out, was here it is December 17th, and not knowing anything about the military, at that point in time, they have pretty much closed down the basic trainings because they're in that Christmas lull. And so when I got back out, I think it was a lady, I'm not real sure, but anyway, she said, "Would you like to go home?" Hello?
Yeah.
And I said, "Sure." She said, "Well, all you have to do is report back here such and such a date, I didn't realize that because I'd already been inducted into the military, I was using leave time that I didn't have. So when I finally got to the point where I could take a leave, I was in the hole.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So went home, reported back, got on the bus, 3 of them loaded down with new recruits, went to basic training at Fort Dix, and that was when you go in the military, you have no idea what to expect. You haven't really heard stories. I don't know that I'd watched that many war movies to really tell you what basic training was all about. But you have there's things in life of people that you never forget, like your first grade teacher. You could probably tell me her name. And your drill sergeants are probably the most important people that you meet up with. And we had 2 of the best, Drill Sergeant Sanders and Drill Sergeant Saunders. Drill Sergeant Saunders was a staff sergeant, and the other gentleman was actually had been in North Carolina when the fellow that wrote the book about the Sunshine Soldier, say that 10 times fast, and he told me a few stories about all of that. But these guys were terrific. Basic training was just an eye-opening experience in terms of it's not so much a do or die, but it's a do or do over. And if you don't do it right the first couple times, they have these holdovers. So you would rerun that cycle.
We call it recycling.
Yeah.
That was a dreaded word.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, anyway. And basic training, I guess the most fun you have in basic training is all the weapons that you're asked to use. And I guess the fondest memory of that is basic training is the idea of how to get a leave. And our training company had a shoot your way out policy. So you had to have a certain score on your ranges. So you had two ranges and then 1 night fire. And you had to have, I forget how many hits out of that. Well, when you go to the ranges, you have, several different positions that you shoot from, support, non-support, and all that kind of good stuff. But they use these holdovers to be scores. Well, they have this culvert, great big culvert that you get down into. And if you look down in the floor, and it's hard to believe this, I guess, but some guys were not really good shots. I mean, you had to zero your rifle, of course, but if you look down in the floor, there was $20 bills, because the guy would tell the holdover, he goes, make sure I don't miss any, and drop the 20 in the bottom. Yeah, but in the bottom of the pit. And so the funniest thing about this was, I didn't drop any money. I figured, I could hit something if nothing else, and usually going home was not. It was a long ride, and it was either a bus trip or, had to go into Philly and all that. But anyway, so I'm shooting down the range, and they're pop-up targets. Mm-hmm. You knew that. So when the 75-meter target came up, it was on my left, and I just swung around, popped it, easy peasy, boom, down it goes. Score, miss, I'm not going to aggravate the guy and tell him, hey, you know. So you shoot other targets. 75 meter comes up again. Boom. Down. Miss. I said, wait a minute. I've shot that down twice, and you said miss twice.
It's because you didn't leave the 20.
No, because my 75 meter target was over
Oh, you
here.
were
I was
shooting
shooting the guys down in the next
I know
lane.
that.
So,
Yeah.
but basic training led to, you know, you finally get through that, and that kind of, it's amazing how that time changes the individual. Because when you start, like, you know, drill and ceremony, and nobody can march in time. But when you go to that graduation, you know, you can just feel the in everybody's attitude, how they feel about the accomplishment that they've done. And I guess that was, for me, that was one of the biggest things the military did, was to give me the confidence that maybe I didn't know I didn't have. And it was, as far as basic training goes, it was an interesting experience. And AIT was, they broke our training company up into 3 sections. One went to Fort Sill for artillery, and one went to military school in Georgia, which they've now moved, and then the
Military police.
Military police,
Okay,
and then signal school.
Yeah.
Was
That
down,
was in Georgia too.
Was
Yeah.
in Georgia too, and that's where I went. And my other half of my training company was over at the MP. And so that was, you know, that's where I got my MOS. I made the mistake in coming through the AFI station. You know how you take typing in high school, you know, and they go, "Can anybody here type?" Huh? Yeah, I can type. You know, well, you only had to type 25 words a minute, and I could type 25 words a minute. I think I made 27. I don't know. But when they interview you to, you know, what do you want to do? Well, what can I do? All right, your test scores are really good. You can do, you know, whatever you want. Well, I don't want a desk job. That was a mistake.
Right.
Because I ended up in a mobile unit with an artillery unit that artillery moves all over the place. We didn't have the M109s, which are the self-propelled 175 howitzers that they have now. All our guns were towed with 5-quarter trucks because they had the ammo in the back. So that's where I ended up at signal school. And then the funny thing was, I thought, well, I'll go over and visit some of my buddies over to the MP school. And I had no idea that the Army at that time trained the Marines for military police.
Yeah. That's the way it was when I was in.
Wow.
Marines, and we all trained together.
That was like, you know, and these guys, I mean, you know, they had gone through basic training, which wasn't that bad when you come to think about it. But they were, you know, hand-to-hand combat in the pits and the sand. I mean, they just, you know. Yeah. And then if you ended up having a Marine as I can't even imagine what that would have been like to have one as a partner. But they were, you know, we went over and saw them one time, and then after that, all these guys that you knew from basic training kind of went their different ways.
The guy I had in the pit looked like Mike Tyson.
Oh my God!
Yeah, I gave up quickly.
Yeah. I surrender.
So when you were in signal school, you had friends over in MP school, so you guys got to get together a little bit.
Well, no, actually, the distance in between there, and I don't remember that much about. We didn't do a whole lot of moving around the post. It was kind of like we found out where their particular area was, and we kind of went over to see them. And I think
it was called Brim's Barracks.
Is that what it was?
That's what it was called. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember that. I don't know why.
And they weren't nice. I mean, they were, you know, they were better than the old Quonset huts or the old World War II clapboard siding deals, like they had at Fort Dix for the AFI stations. You know, you turn the heat on, and if you had an upper bunk, you could die of heat exhaustion in the night in the dead of winter or summer. It didn't matter which. And so I can't imagine what those guys went through. But air conditioning wasn't a big thing during the Second World War, so I guess they were, you know, pretty good. So after that, as you get close to the end of school, you get orders to be cut, and it seemed like at that time it was a ping pong game of where were you assigned, and it was kind of like the famous military, the idea of the rumor of the day. When there was nothing else to do, you just create a rumor and see how fast it took to get around post. Well, at first, I had orders cut to go to the engineering school in Virginia, and I can't remember, Fort Eustis, I believe.
Might have been, yeah.
And then I had orders cut for the Pentagon. Boy, that would have been sweet, because I was an 05 Fox Charlie, which was a Morse code, non-Morse code radio teletype operator. Didn't want a desk job.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been a clerk.
Mm-hmm.
But so when it came down, I didn't get any of that. I was shipped. So ended up with an artillery unit, had a fire base. Our daily routine was you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, they call a fire mission in. You're sending, well, the first thing we had to do every morning was run a morning report. The clerks in the DTOC would give us all this information on MIA, KIA,
Mm-hmm.
the sick bay, the whole 9 yards, and because we would type it up on a tape machine, and then run it through, and then that was the first thing we did every morning.
Let's step back a little bit.
Sure.
You graduated from signal school.
Sure.
Okay. Then did you get a month off or something like that?
No.
You didn't?
Yeah,
you
I
didn't
got a week. Remember, they took my leave.
Oh, that's right. Okay, you forgot about it. You lost your leave.
I was working on that.
So then you get your orders for Vietnam.
Sure.
Okay. You fly over or go over on a ship?
Yeah, no, flew.
So, a question I ask people, when you got off the plane in Vietnam, what was your first thought? What struck you the most?
It seemed the humidity when you fly into the country, just how green it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful from the air. And then there's all this apprehension that goes on about what's it going to be like when I get on the ground here, and then where you're going to end up. And I guess that was one of the fortunate things of the whole deal was I ended up in a unit that was short on radio teletype operators, and so we were the grapes to be made into that fine wine, and so I was I guess the biggest thing about the military, or anything for that matter in life, is how fortunate you are in the people that you're with, and I was quite fortunate to have some NCOs, Sergeant Howard, Sergeant Fumich, Sergeant Mitchell. Our section chief was Sergeant Dixon, who had actually, he was a black master sergeant, had fought in World War II, gone through Korea, and now he was in Vietnam. And if we ever got in any trouble, he liked cigars. And so we would always bring him some really good cigars before hopefully he got the bad news that we did something and screwed up.
These people made quite an impression on you. It's been 40 years.
Yeah.
You can still recall their names.
You can't forget these guys.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, imagine my crew chief was Bill Howard. Now, Bill Howard could sit at a teletype. Now, teletype's it's phased. It's unlike a regular typewriter. You can change the phase on it for how fast you can type. Well, Bill could type something like 112 words a minute, and the only guy that I knew was faster was Sergeant Fumich, George. And I think he could type, I don't know, 117, something like that. But Bill typed with 2 fingers. He could smoke a cigarette, drink a cup of coffee, and if you were on the other end of that teletype and he was hitting the phase bar, the pulsar, you'd never know it was a person typing. You'd think he was running a machine and it just hit a part of the tape that was, waiting for the next phase to go through. These guys were incredible. they made your daily life more pleasurable.
And when you were there, when you first got there, before you were with this artillery unit, so you traveled around Vietnam, went out into the...
Well, we had a fire base.
Yeah.
And the fire base is pretty much where we stayed, unless we were assigned to go out with a unit that had to move from one location to the other. That's the worst thing about being with an artillery unit. If you remember the movie MASH, or the television show, they had a phrase called bugging out, and we didn't use that. We said we're going to move.
Yeah.
But that was where they had to disassemble the whole thing and then go to wherever, because the enemy lines were changing. Well, we moved because we had to shoot. We were fire support. We had OPs, downrange observation points. We had AOPs, aerial observations, those little 58s they would fly over. If we were, they would radio in the information, we would give it to the DTOC. The DTOC would send it out to the guns in the firing circle. There are 5 tubes to an artillery battery. There are 4 batteries to a battalion. And then they would fire downrange, and then the rounds would be, and we've had to listen to all this all day long. Because it started, like I said, at 4 in the morning and didn't stop until, sometimes 2, 3 o'clock at night, and then start over the next day. I think we had a major, and his name I can't remember, but he was a good man. I mean, they really worked hard on these guys to their ability to lay down fire. Because it was just so important to the infantry people that were out in the field. Their life was miserable. I mean, when you think about one of the things that, if there was a guy that was wounded in an infantry unit out in the bush, and depending on how long they had been out, if they medevaced them out, if your shirt was in better condition than mine was, we'd trade shirts, because you knew you were going to get yours cut off when you got back there.
Right.
So, it was being at a fire base. The little place called Cantey was nice, but if you had to go out with a unit, and that's what we basically did. I was with I forgot what that was now. What did they call that? The headquarters company. Mm-hmm. So that was, what we did is they call us up. We had, I think it was 8 or 9 radio units that we could, go out with the different battalions, because they didn't have their own.
I see. So you'd load up the trucks and move to a different area.
Oh yeah. And for us, it was like, it wasn't too bad. The unit was self-contained, and it was air conditioning, because if it wasn't air conditioning, I remember when I got back to the States, doing an interview with the Motorola people who made all the electronics. Mm-hmm. And now these things are so outdated that I wouldn't even know what the inside of their comm centers looked like. But, one of the things they were trying to find out was, how durable the machine was, or the units that we used. And I said, well, the main factor is the amount of heat buildup. It's an aluminum case. If the air conditioning fails and we have to open the door, those units will burn up in no time.
So you had lots of visitors when you were in those buildings. Yeah, people wanting to get cooled off.
Yeah. Oh, and that's the thing. You never had problems getting people to pull duty.
Yeah.
Because it's like, hey, you want to go sit in a little tiny box and watch a phase thing go bump, bump, bump all night long? Sure.
Yeah,
no problem.
Where it's 75 degrees or 80 degrees instead of
and
110 degrees outside. Yeah.
Not only that, because of the cryptography material that we had in it, the little gray boxes that coded all the messages going out, it was self-contained. You couldn't get in just by opening the handle. Mm-hmm. You had to ring a doorbell.
I see. I see.
So and then that you had a door that opened in and a door that opened out. But it was an aluminum box. You could, pretty well blow it up with no problem. But yeah, it was nice to be in there. If you weren't claustrophobic, you were okay, because you literally had an aisle about, I don't know, a little more than 2 feet. You had teletypes on this side, open bay on this side, your regular teletype here, your 2 KW7s, which were your cryptography boxes. And yeah, I freaked a guy out one night on that. I lost my code book. They told us to come in, and I turned in all my stuff. And at midnight, you change your codes. And so I was just trying to get him to give me the new radio call signals, you know, and he thought I was the Vietnamese calling him with an American accent. And he goes, "No, man, I can't give you that information." I was like, "Okay, dude." Guess who's not going to be on the net anymore? Me. So yeah, that was pretty much what we did day in and day out. You know? We listened to, we could always, the artillery rounds that they fired were, the round went in, and then you had a powder that went in behind it. And a powder looks like a roll of toilet paper. And they come in these plastic tubes like this, and then there's 7 of them in there. And I could always, you know, they normally shot like 5 powers depending on how far down range they wanted to throw the round. And but when they lit that thing off with a 7 powder, I mean, it would just bring the teeth right out of your head. And I didn't. Some days, you know, when I didn't have a lot to do, I would be driver. You know, you always had to pull CQ, and I'd be a duty driver for somebody. That's one of the interesting things that you run into. It's about the people. I mean, we're really fortunate that I was, but even today, the people that I see telling their stories on No Men Left Behind, those guys are incredible. But we didn't have. You know, once Vietnam closed down and there was that big rush to get out, and the Vietnamese Army, ARVN, took over, it was just a matter of time. Vietnam had started long before we ever got there. Kennedy was, from what history tells us, was ill-advised on what we could do, and I don't know what they were really trying to do, because Vietnam, I think, was just on the cusp of Korea. And Korea has been known as the Forgotten War. I'm not sure what they would call Vietnam.
I've heard it called the Television War, because it was one of the first wars they did a lot of television from, you know, or up-to-the-date news reports, I guess.
Right.
You know. I guess they all have nicknames. You know, so.
If you go back and look at the history of World War II and the Marines in the Pacific were attacking island after island after island. Nothing changed for them. In Europe, the only division that went into Normandy that actually had experience was the first Big Red 1. The rest of them were completely new troops. They had no idea what was coming. The generals ran the war. In Korea, there was a shift because we were there to help out the South Koreans to keep the North Koreans, who political differences, but it was all about South Korea is where all the good stuff is. You know, North Korea is barren. If you look at, I tell the kids this, if you look at a map of the world at night with the lights on, you can always find North Korea.
Dark.
It's dark. Yeah. There might be one little light on, you know. And but that's when it became a political war, because they started sitting down at tables. And then when they got to Vietnam, it was not only the evening news, but it was no longer the generals running the war. Yeah. And that's what made it so difficult for the troops. I think the idea that the Qua Trang Valley, which was the valley, the shadow of the death, that was, you know, the movie, we were soldiers then. The first cab, my outfit was, they were almost decimated up there. But the whole point was they fought tooth and nail to hold this position, and then once the fight was over,
they gave it up.
They gave it up.
What years were you there?
From the time I got out of basic training till they shut down and sent us home. 71 to, what was it, 74? 73.
So you served 2 tours?
No, just one.
One
Just
tour,
one. Just one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah, 18 months.
so you were there 18 months,
Yeah.
not just 12 months. Yeah.
Oh, no, you're right, 12 months.
12 months.
Yeah.
You were mentioning your sergeants a while ago,
Yeah.
and the impression they made on you. One thing I've never asked anybody, and you know, when you grow up, you have buddies you play ball with, you might be in the Boy Scouts or you go to school with. Then you're put in a situation, you go to basic, of course you get through that, you know, you remember, but then you're put into a situation like 12 months overseas serving with someone. You become very close to those people. And then you're sent home.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gone from. Did you stay in touch with any of those folks that you
A few
served with?
A few of the guys. One of my best buds, a guy from Pennsylvania, Randy Hummer. I hear from him from time to time. It's been ages since I've heard from him. Another guy that was from Puerto Rico, Charlie Vargas. I hear from him occasionally. He lives up in New York now, and there's some great stories there. Randy, when he got out of the service, was going to Shippensburg State to get his civil engineering degree, and so for extra money, he joined the National Guard and became a lieutenant. Went to officer school, and then when Iraq invaded Kuwait,
I got activated.
Yeah, he
I
got
gotta go
activated.
back again.
And here's the funny part: he was a tanker. And I called him and said, you know, Randy, didn't I teach you anything? You know, he was a great guy, just super. But I think because he was like 6'4", being in the infantry wasn't his calling.
Right.
So, but yeah. And then, you know, Fred Cons, there was, we had a guy from Minnesota who I can remember, I'm trying to think of his name. I know it starts with a K, but anyway, his idea for fun in Minnesota, they lived out in the middle of nowhere, and so he kind of liked the Army because it was in the middle of nowhere most of the time. But his mom gave him hell because she thought he had smoked, because like there was guys in our outfit that did smoke, and so all his clothes when he went home, that's what they smelled like. But his idea for fun was getting on a snowmobile and riding for like 2 miles in the snow to go to Pizza Hut. And I thought, gee whiz, I'm not going to visit you. We had a guy named Hammer, who was or Hamel, who was one of our radio technicians. And he was a sweet kid, piece of work. And the sweetest of all was a guy named Pat Barker. He's from West Virginia. He's like 18 years old. I don't know. I think he joined because he was going to get drafted. A lot of guys in basic training, it was so funny. They were 2 year unassigned USs. The recruiters had gotten to them and told them, hey, you're going to be drafted. So why don't you just join for 2 years? Well, you know, if you're going to join for 2 years and you're not going to get to pick what you're going to do, why not join for 3 years and, you know, maybe come out of this with a trade, be a helicopter mechanic, something like that. So I was surprised at the number of people in my basic training that were like that. But these guys were in my permanent party, and just, you know, again, it was the group of people that made the whole thing up. And just, you know, funny as could be. I was just, you know, each day you never knew what was going to happen or what was coming down, but you could always depend on, you know. I remember Hummer, we were getting some citation from the general of the division, and at 6'4", I mean, you know, it's kind of like he's up here and we're down here. But we were standing there waiting for the general to come down, and a bug flew in Randy's ear. So here's a guy in line, we had our fatigues on, and he's standing there screaming, hitting the side of his head like this, trying to get this bug out. They had to take him to the hospital and shine a flashlight in there in a dark room to get it to crawl back out. But it just, I mean, I lost it. It was like, and then they, for whatever reason, before the ceremony, they fired off this old howitzer, you know, like they did back in the day. And we were right, like it was over here, we're right here, and we couldn't hear now because we got this concussion from the round, and the general's coming down and he's shaking hands, which I wish I'd read lips because I had no idea what he said to me. I couldn't hear him. So, the military does strange things.
Yeah, it does.
No matter what you think,
So you were,
still a good group.
yeah, you feel that even though you were drafted, you didn't volunteer to go. And there's how do you feel today about, I tell this story about this fellow one time I met that just retired out of the Army. And this was so funny. At the time, I thought he was really strange. And now when I look at society, I think he wasn't all that out. I said, what do you think of being retired out of the service? He said, shook his head and he says, all these people and nobody in charge. And,
right.
And discipline-wise, nobody wants to go to war. So we
No.
won't forget about it, but we won't talk about that. How do you feel that changed you as far as a young man?
I don't know that, just like he said, no, all these people and nobody in charge. I would think that for those whose experience is not to say that some people didn't come out of the military and had a bad experience. And I won't go into it, but I know and have seen those that had happened to. But for me, if you asked me, would you do it all over again? I wouldn't hesitate. I'd say yes. It was, for most people, it is a life-changing experience, either for the good or for the bad, for the positive or the negative, however you want to think about it. But it was something that changed me because of maturity. And that's what it allowed me to do, but it not only allowed me to mature, but it gave me responsibility to do it in. The idea of rank, I looked at Sergeant Howard and knew he was Sergeant Howard, and I was, Speedy 4, and it didn't make a whole lot of difference what the rank was. Our lieutenants, our officers, we were fortunate enough to have some good ones. I think the most trouble I ever got in with a lady officer it was early in the morning and I didn't see her bars, and I walked past her without saluting, and I thought she dressed me down right there, and I thought, gee whiz, lady, give me a break. But anyway, but overall, that I think would most people tell you they wouldn't exchange the experience, because where else can you go to get that kind of experience? I like what you said about nobody in charge. There was always somebody in charge, and I guess one of the funniest things, not really funny but true, because it was meant. One of my drill sergeants used to tell me, he goes, "Lilley, do something even if it's wrong." And that was the key. You needed to do something.
Right.
And so I had no problem with the rank and the order. You kind of understood how that worked, and you didn't you didn't want to come off and be a tough guy. I mean, we had this one guy, Caldwell, and he was a socialist, and he may be a Republican now. I don't know. But
wait a minute.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Right, okay.
But he was a hardcore. I came in this army a private. I can go out of this army a private. But deep down inside, you knew that in a bind, him and his M60 would be right there with you. He'd be the last guy to beat B for Boogie. So that's what it was about. It was about the people. The growth that took place, the friendships that evolved, and even though they may not have endured over the years, because like you said, it's been a long time, but you don't forget these people, and they don't forget you, for whatever reason. And names, I mean, like I said, from time to time you'd have to be a duty driver, and there was, like we had a Captain Blood in my outfit. We had a Lieutenant Strange in my outfit, and that was the two best. There were some others, but it's the people are what made it, and we're fortunate today to have the people that we have in the military. It's a different it's a different place altogether than what it was for me or the people before us. But the same thing is true then as it was true now. It's people that they're not so much interested in what the rank is, but the job that needs to be done, and they do it day in and day out. I mean, they're 24/7 people.
So you did your tour.
Yep.
And you got out, and
Yep.
you came back home.
Yep.
Okay. Did you stay in the military?
No.
After that, you said
I was, like everybody, when you think you're getting out, right? Which is kind of funny because the guy that, when you go down to check out, if that's what you want to call it, you have to hand in all your cards. Well, I went down the first day and handed in, and the guy that checked me out, his MOS or his job originally, he was a mortician, which I thought was appropriate. And he said, "You're missing, you're missing something." Said, "We're about done for today. Go back and come back tomorrow." Gee, Christmas. So I did. I go back to the barracks, and I mean, you're in your dress greens. So I go back the next day, and sat around. And finally, I asked the guy. I said, "What's missing?" He said, and I can't remember the name of the card, but anyway, it was a little card, it was a DT form that they'd given me. He goes, "It's this." And I reached in my wallet and pulled out. I said, "You mean this?" He goes, "They were supposed to have taken that from you back in basic training or someplace." And I go, "Well, here, take it." And so then I finally got to leave, say goodbye to everybody and
So you were discharged.
discharged. But when you get home, and not too many, I don't know, months or years or whatever, you get a little form from the government telling that you've been placed on inactive reserve.
Right. Yeah. You don't have to go to meetings every month.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
And hopefully, and thank goodness I didn't, get called back in for anything, because I got assigned to the something like the 82nd Airborne or 100. It was, I didn't want to be with those guys.
Right.
So after 4 years pass, you finally one day in the mail receive your little certificate.
Yeah.
It's nice looking.
So they call that a 6-year service, I guess.
Yeah,
It's a
6-year service.
obligation or whatever they want to
Yeah,
call it.
I had no idea what it was. I
Yeah.
just knew that I got my 2 in. They didn't extend it. Vietnam was over. Nobody, you got home, and that's the strange thing to me about how the military was treated then, different society, and how it's treated now.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question.
It's day and night. I mean, back then, they knew you were in the military because you wore your uniform all the time, your haircut.
Yeah.
Today, who knows? The military has gone from a shame on you to, what those guys have to give up, their family, and everything else. But they're respected within the community.
Yeah. You didn't get that when you come home.
No, you didn't. You very seldom talked about it.
Right. Right.
You didn't. I've not told any war stories because, like my captain, Captain Fritz used to say, I know them. I've got them numbered. If you want to hear one, just say a number and I'll tell it to you.
Yeah.
So. And some of them are kind of funny, some of them are kind of sad, some of them will just keep you up all night.
Right.
Some of them you just, have forgotten. So, but that has been a real, and I can't say I'm bitter about it, but it's about time.
Right.
And I can understand why they felt the way they did about Vietnam. Because of the way the war was run through the politicians, what they were trying to gain, and what they did gain, one way to think about Vietnam is we tested a heck of a lot of equipment. When you look at the military now with the Cobras, the Black Hawks, just the reason why they got such a workout and became as good as they did is because of the amount of use that they got in Vietnam. I mean, the creation of the weapons, just it's gotten better. thank goodness.
I'm going to step back a little bit. When we first started talking today, you were talking about what was neat about basic was the weapons.
Yeah.
Did you hunt before you went to the military?
I
Had you
was-
ever
I
been
was-
involved with weapons before?
They wouldn't. My brothers wouldn't take me hunting. My only experience with shooting a rifle was my brother had an old .22 that he gave me, and I can remember going down at before Christmas at the Islet Farm,
Yeah.
and there were some trees off on the side of the road with mistletoe on it. So I thought I'd go down there and shoot some mistletoe down. Well, that's where I got a lot of practice at not hitting mistletoe.
Yeah.
But in any event, it was you cock it and put the round in and put it down, and you pull back, and then pull the trigger. Well, the little clip had slid loose. There was a pin in there, and it came back and struck me in the eye.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. Heck with it.
So you get home, you're out, then you pursue a teaching career?
I got out and wanted to, I worked in construction for a while, and then after, I forget how many years, I got a letter from the Department of the Army stating that, if you have X number of years to use your GI Bill. And I thought, well, if I don't, that's going to be on my regret list. So I decided I'd go back to school and get a degree. I was fortunate enough to have, again, a really good advisor here at Salisbury, because I was thinking about going into elementary education. And he made the comment, well, imagine yourself 20 years down the road in a third grade classroom. And I thought, I can't imagine that. So I was fortunate enough that the University of Maryland Eastern Shore had, at that time, an industrial arts program, which changed to industrial education, and now is technology education. And with the background and experience that I had from construction and working for Otis Marine in the cabinet shop, and some of the people that I work with there, I just, that was my forte, something I enjoyed doing. And so for the last 31 years, I've taught at the same school, and until they built the new school, I'd taught in the same classroom for 29 years.
How about that?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the discipline thing again.
Yeah.
How's that working out for you?
Yeah. Well, it's each year it changes a little bit more. We have, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and rhetoric. But for us, it's the relationship you build between the kids. You have some that, for whatever reason, nothing you can do can change their minds.
But we still have a bunch of good kids.
Oh, by far.
Oh, yeah.
By far. We not only have a bunch of good kids, we have a bunch of great kids.
Yeah.
And I'm fortunate enough that a number of years ago they asked me if I would coach the Science Olympic team. And these are kind of like the smart kids, super kids. But it's like they're coaching me. I'm just kind of like, yeah, I can do that for you if you want. You just tell me what I need to do. But it's been a real gratifying experience. I've been fortunate to have good people to work with. Todd Giddings, great guy. Chris Emge, who came with us as our third teacher a few years ago, super guy. Without him, my technology background is nowhere compared to his, and he saves us, or saves me just about every day there is. Incredible, both guys. And of course, very supportive staff over there and at Bennett. Just fortunate,
So you're getting a little close to retirement, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Matter of fact, I read in the magazine the other day, if I can make it till I'm 70, which is 100 years from now, I'll be able to.
Yeah.
No, I'm hoping maybe in a couple years I'll be able to see that light.
You have students.
Oh yeah, all the
so
time.
if one of them came to you and asked you, said, Mr. Lilley, I'm thinking about joining the military, what would your reaction to him be?
Funny you should ask that. it's surprising the military has become a lot of things these days, but one of the most important things that I think it gives anybody that's interested in joining, depending on the amount of time they want to give up, is the technical skills. I've had students that have gone in and fly the AWACS on board, and the technical background that they have with that, you know, where are you going to get that in public life on your resume? Appointments to either the Naval Academy, I don't think I've had anybody, yeah, one student for West Point. That's incredible, but when a lot of the guys, there's that macho background of the Marine Corps, and there's no doubt about it. They've got the best looking uniforms. They are by far, you know, the Marines. You can't beat them. And I have a lot of friends that were Marines. But I always encourage them to look at the military in terms of their future. I know the experience will change them in a positive way if they allow it to change them in a positive way. But more importantly, besides the experience, the training and the background they'll get for their life coming, if mine is any indication, I may be just a teacher, but for whatever, I've really enjoyed the job I've had, and what they can come out with would be far, technically wise, superior to what, you know, I had a chance to do. I always try and encourage them to make good choices in that respect. Just don't join because, you know, I want to be in the infantry. Well, what are you going to do? You know, it's like we had a guy in my artillery unit, was an E6, and in the artillery unit I was working with, it wasn't mine, and he goes, you know, what am I going to do when I get out? You know, pull a lanyard?
Right.
Where do you get that job? So I always encourage them to look at it in terms of future jobs.
Right.
I've never discouraged anybody that I can remember from going in. I think it's a good move if you can give up that time. We see today that I don't think that college is for everybody. And the military actually gives you an opportunity to get trained, to get paid. You can go around the world if you want. You can stay in, you know, 6 years. My nephew just got out of the Marine Corps this past year. He was out for one day, had a job with one of the oil companies down in the Gulf after being out of the military for one day.
How about that?
Because of the technical skills he picked up in the Marine Corps. He was an Osprey mechanic, the ones that the blades turn up. He was their computer technician on board. So, you know, what better advertisement can I give you?
Oh, that's good. Well, look, Courtland, I want to thank you for your service to our country and to our county.
Yes,
I mean,
well, appreciate it.
Well,
I thank you for the good things that you do. I've enjoyed I've enjoyed having you as a sort of a neighbor at least 3 days a week.
Yeah, well, we've had a lot of good conversations in the past few
I'm
years.
looking forward to that many more.
Yeah. Okay, and that's our show for today for our Eastern Shore veterans, their story, their honor. If you would like to be interviewed for this show, the number is at the bottom. Contact us here at PAC 14.